When I found the envelope, my hands did not shake. That detail stayed with me long after everything else changed. I was standing alone in our kitchen, early in the morning, wearing my old gray sweater, the one with loose sleeves that always slid down my wrists. The house was quiet in the way it only gets after many years of living in it. The refrigerator hummed softly. The clock above the sink ticked with patience. Outside, the world felt far away. The envelope was not new. I could tell that right away. It was thin, yellowed at the edges, and slightly bent, like it had been handled many times and then carefully put back. It had slipped forward when I opened a drawer that rarely got used, a drawer filled with forgotten things, old menus, loose batteries, rubber bands that had lost their stretch. What stopped me was my name, written clearly, carefully, in Daniel's handwriting. I stared at it longer than I should have. My name had never felt strange to me before, but in that moment, it looked like it belonged to someone else. I told myself to put it back. I told myself it could wait. Somehow, I already knew it could not. I sat down at the kitchen table, holding the envelope in both hands. That table had carried our life for decades. It held scratches from homework projects and faint rings from forgotten coffee cups. I remembered the sound of our children's laughter around that table, the arguments, the apologies, the quiet dinners when everyone was tired but still together. The envelope felt out of place there, like it had been waiting for the right moment to be seen. Before opening it, I looked around the room. The curtains were half open, morning light fell across the floor. Everything looked the same, and yet nothing felt the same. I took a slow breath, not because I was afraid, but because something inside me already understood that once I opened it, I would never return to who I was before. I had been married to Daniel for 37 years. That number meant something to me. It meant history. It meant commitment. I believed we had shared everything that mattered. Not every thought, not every feeling, but the important things, the things that shape a life. I was wrong. I met Daniel when I was 22. I still remember the grocery store lights, too bright and always humming. I worked the register part-time while trying to figure out what I wanted from life. Daniel came in every Thursday evening, same time, same quiet steps. He bought milk, bread, and apples. Always apples. He never rushed, never complained. He thanked me every time, like it mattered. One evening, after weeks of small nods and polite smiles, he asked me my name. His voice was soft, careful. I told him. He repeated it once, quietly, like he wanted to be sure he got it right. The next week, he said my name when he walked in. That small thing made me feel seen. We talked more after that, about work, about the weather, about nothing important. Daniel was shy, but there was something steady about him, something calm. When he asked me out, his hands shook just a little. I noticed, and I liked that he did not hide it. Our first date was coffee and a walk. Nothing fancy, but we talked for hours. He told me he wanted a simple life, a home, a family. I believed him. We married 3 years later in a small church. Family filled the front rows. Friends sat behind them. I remember standing next to him, holding his hand, feeling like I was stepping into something solid, something dependable. Daniel worked hard, long hours, sometimes too long. He believed providing was love. I believed presence was love. Somewhere between those two beliefs, we made it work. I stayed home when the children were small. Our daughter came first, then our son. Daniel cried both times, though he turned away quickly. He never liked being seen when emotions got too close. Our kitchen became the center of everything. Breakfasts rushed, dinners loud. Life felt full. As the years passed, the noise faded. The children grew. They needed us less. Then they left. The house did not feel empty, just quieter. Daniel and I adjusted. Morning coffee, evening news. Silence became our companion. I thought it meant comfort. I did not realize silence can also hide things. The changes started small, so small I almost missed them. Daniel checked the mail before I could. He kept his phone close. When I asked about his day, his answers shortened. Fine. Busy. At night, I felt him awake beside me, staring at the ceiling. Is something wrong? I asked once. No, he said gently. Just thinking. I wanted to believe him. So I did. The day I found the envelope, rain tapped softly against the window. A slow rain, patient. I opened the envelope with care. Inside were letters, folded neatly, some yellowed with age. The first letter was dated 20 years earlier. My chest tightened. Daniel wrote about regret, about a choice made before our marriage, about carrying something heavy for a long time. Then I read her name, Clara, and then I read about the child, a daughter. The room felt unsteady, not spinning, just changed. I read every letter, all the years, all the silence. By the time I finished, the rain had stopped. I sat alone in the quiet kitchen, holding a truth that had waited decades to be seen. And I knew, with a calm sadness, that this was only the beginning. After I finished reading the letters, I did not move right away. I stayed seated at the kitchen table, my hands resting flat on the wood, as if I needed to feel something solid beneath me. The house felt unfamiliar, even though nothing had changed. Every sound felt sharper, clearer, like my senses had been turned up too high. The clock above the sink ticked steadily. The refrigerator hummed the way it always did. Somewhere outside, a car passed, its tires hissing on the wet road. I gathered the letters slowly, carefully, as if they might tear if I rushed. I stacked them in the order I had read them and slid them back into the envelope. My name looked heavier now, like it carried more meaning than before. I did not know what to do next. I did not know what I was supposed to feel. So I did the only thing I could. I put the envelope back in the drawer. Not because I wanted to forget it, but because I needed time to understand what it meant for my life, for my marriage, for the woman I thought I was. That day passed in pieces. I made breakfast, but barely touched it. The smell of toast turned my stomach. I folded laundry without remembering which shirts belonged to Daniel and which were mine. My hands moved on their own while my thoughts stayed at the kitchen table. I looked at old photographs on the wall as I walked past them. Birthdays, vacations, smiling faces. I wondered how many of those moments had happened while Daniel carried this secret quietly inside him. I wondered if he had smiled through guilt, if he had held our children while thinking of the one he never knew. That thought hurt more than I expected, not because it made me feel less loved, but because it made me feel less known. When Daniel came home that evening, I heard his car pull into the driveway. The familiar sound usually brought comfort. That day, it brought tension. I stood at the sink, pretending to rinse a cup, listening to his footsteps. The door opened, closed. "Hey," he called softly. "Hi," I replied. He hummed his jacket the same way he always did, kicked off his shoes. Nothing was different, and yet everything was. He glanced at me longer than usual, like he was searching my face for something. I kept my expression calm, neutral. "Long day?" he asked. "Yes," I said, and this time it was true. We ate dinner together that night, the same meals we had eaten hundreds of times before. The table felt wider than usual. Forks touched plates, glasses clinked softly. No one spoke much. At one point, Daniel looked up and asked, "Are you all right?" His voice held concern, real concern. "I'm just tired," I said. I wondered how many times he had said the same thing while carrying a lifetime of regret behind it. That night, I lay awake beside him. He fell asleep quickly, his breathing slow and steady. I watched the ceiling, counting shadows. For the first time in years, I felt alone while lying next to my husband. The days that followed were quiet in a way that felt deliberate. Daniel moved carefully around me, like he was afraid of saying the wrong thing. He asked more questions than usual. "Do you need anything? Are you sure you're okay?" I answered politely, briefly. I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw tightened when he thought I wasn't looking. He knew something was wrong, but he did not know I already knew everything. I carried the truth with me everywhere. It sat in my chest when I washed dishes. It followed me into the shower. I thought about Clara often, about the life she might have lived, about the moment she learned she was pregnant. I wondered if Daniel had been there for her at all, if he had known how scared she was. And then I thought about the child, a daughter, a grown woman now, somewhere in the world, with a life shaped by questions Daniel never answered. That thought kept me awake at night. One afternoon, while Daniel was out running errands, I took the envelope out again. I sat at the table and read the letters slowly, one by one. This time, I noticed details I had missed before. The way his handwriting changed over the years. The early letters were longer, more emotional. Later ones were shorter, controlled, like he had learned how to lock his feelings away neatly. In one letter, he wrote about watching our daughter graduate, about wondering if his other child looked anything like her. That sentence stayed with me. It made my chest ache. He loved our children deeply, I had never doubted that, but love divided by silence still leaves scars. I realized then that Daniel's secret had not only protected him from shame, it had protected me from pain, but it had also taken something from me, the right to know the full truth of my own life. When Daniel finally spoke about the distance between us, it happened without planning. We were washing dishes together, standing side by side. The water ran steadily, plates clinked softly. No one spoke much. "He feels like he's been distant," he said. I dried a plate slowly before answering. "Yes," I said. "You have." He nodded, staring into the sink. "I don't know how to fix it," he said. I turned off the water and looked at him. "What do you think is broken?" I asked. He hesitated, then said quietly, "Me." That word landed between us heavy and honest. "If there's something you need to tell me," I said gently, "you can." He opened his mouth, closed it again. Fear crossed his face like a shadow. "Not yet," he whispered. In that moment, I understood something clearly. He was not ready, and I realized something else, too. I was. Sleep came in short pieces after that. My dreams were filled with unfinished conversations and unfamiliar faces. I woke up tired even after resting. During the day, I replayed memories. Moments that once felt ordinary now felt suspicious. Late nights at work, sudden silences, long walks alone. At the time, I called it stress. Now I wondered if it had been grief. Daniel tried harder in small ways. He made coffee for me in the mornings. He held my hand longer than usual. I appreciated the effort, but it also made my heart ache, because love built on silence feels fragile once you see the cracks. One evening, our daughter called. She talked about her children, her busy life. I listened and smiled at the right moments. Daniel sat beside me, nodding, laughing softly. I watched his face. I wondered if he thought about his other child during these calls, if joy and regret lived side by side in him. After we hung up, I asked, "Do you ever think about the past?" He stiffened slightly. "Sometimes," he said. "Does it bother you?" I asked. He looked at me then, really looked. "Yes," he said quietly, "every day." That honesty startled me. It told me more than he intended. The truth was pressing closer now. The silence was thinning. I knew the conversation was coming. I felt it building between us, slow and unavoidable. The envelope stayed hidden in the drawer, waiting. So did I. Because some truths need space. They need time to be spoken without destroying everything around them. And I was learning, slowly, that love does not end when it is tested. Sometimes that is when it finally begins to tell the truth. The longer I stayed quiet, the heavier the house began to feel. It was not a loud heaviness. It did not shout or slam doors. It sat in the air like dust you only notice when sunlight cuts through a room. Daniel felt it too. I could tell by the way he moved, careful and slow, like every step mattered more than before. He paused before speaking, as if he were measuring his words in his mind. Guilt has a way of teaching people to walk softly. We were together more, but we spoke less. Our conversations stayed on safe ground. Groceries, appointments, the weather. Anything deeper felt dangerous, like it might open a door neither of us was ready to walk through. So we circled each other quietly, pretending we were fine. Some mornings I woke up almost believing that. I made coffee. I opened the curtains. I told myself I could live with this. Then a thought would slip in without warning. A simple one. A daughter. And the weight returned. I wondered where she lived, what her mornings looked like, if she drank coffee too, or tea. I wondered if she had Daniel's eyes, if she laughed the way our daughter did, with her whole face, if she had ever felt something missing and not known why. Those questions followed me everywhere. They followed me into the grocery store. They followed me on my walks around the block. They followed me into my sleep. Daniel began staying up later at night. He sat in the living room with the lights low, the television on but muted. I could hear it from the bedroom, a soft glow behind closed doors. One night, I joined him. I did not say anything at first. I just sat at the other end of the couch. The space between us felt wider than it ever had. Not empty, just full of things unsaid. "I feel like I'm losing you," he said suddenly. His voice was quiet, not accusing, just tired. I took a slow breath before answering. "I'm still here," I said. "But not the same," he replied. He was right, and for once I did not try to soften the truth. "No," I said, "I'm not." He nodded, staring at his hands. "I don't know how to fix it." I looked at him then, really looked. He seemed smaller somehow, older, like carrying something heavy for too long had bent him forward. "I don't think this is something you fix," I said. "I think it's something you face." He swallowed hard and said nothing. The next day, I went to the library where I used to work. I did not tell Daniel where I was going. I just needed space to think. The building smelled the same as it always had, paper and quiet, time standing still. I wandered through the aisles, running my fingers along the spines of books. So many stories, so many lives. I thought about how much of our own story I had not known, how many chapters had been written without me. I sat at a table near the window and watched people come and go, a young mother with a stroller, an older man reading the newspaper, everyone carrying something, some things just better hidden than others. It became clear to me then that Daniel's secret had not only shaped his life, it had shaped mine too, even without my knowing. Our marriage had been built on honesty in daily things, schedules, responsibilities, promises kept. But the biggest truth had been missing, and that absence had left its mark. When I got home, Daniel was in the kitchen. He looked up when he heard the door. "I made soup," he said. His voice held hope, like he was offering more than just food. "That's kind," I replied. We ate together at the table. The soup was warm, comforting. Halfway through the meal, Daniel set his spoon down. He took a breath. "I don't like this distance," he said. "Neither do I answered. He hesitated, then asked, "Did I do something wrong?" That question almost broke me, because the answer was complicated, because it held years inside it. "You did something a long time ago," I said carefully, "and you kept it from me." The color drained from his face. He knew. "I was afraid," he whispered. "I know," I said, "but fear doesn't make the damage smaller." Tears filled his eyes. He looked down at his hands, twisting his fingers together. "I wanted to protect you," he said. I shook my head gently. "You protected yourself." That truth landed between us, quiet and heavy. He did not argue. He could not. That night, after we cleaned up, I took the envelope out of the drawer. I placed it on the kitchen table between us. I did not open it. I did not hand it to him. I just let it sit there. Daniel stared at it for a long time. His shoulders slumped, like he had finally set something down. "You found it," he said. "Yes," I replied. "I was going to tell you," he said again. "When?" I asked gently. He opened his mouth, then closed it. "I don't know," he admitted. That answer hurt more than any lie, because it told me the truth was never close to coming out. He reached for the envelope, then stopped himself, like he didn't deserve to touch it. "I was ashamed," he whispered. "Every year that passed made it harder." I listened, not because it was easy, but because it mattered. He told me about Clara, about being young and careless, about making a choice and not knowing how to face the result. He told me he never met the child, never held her, never heard her cry. He thought staying away was better. He thought he was doing the right thing. Sometimes what feels easier is not what is right. It just delays the pain. After that night, nothing dramatic happened. No shouting, no threats, but everything shifted. Daniel began talking more openly than he ever had before, about guilt, about fear, about how the secret had followed him through every year of our marriage. I listened, and slowly something inside me changed. I stopped seeing him as only the man who hurt me. I began seeing him as a man who had been running from himself. That did not erase the pain, but it softened it. Still, trust did not return quickly. Some mornings I woke up angry without knowing why. Other days I just felt tired. Daniel accepted it all quietly. He did not rush me. He did not ask for forgiveness. That patience mattered. One afternoon, as we sat together in the living room, I asked a question I had been avoiding. "Do you think about finding her?" I meant the daughter. He looked surprised, then thoughtful. "Yes, every day," he said, "but I don't know if I have the right." I nodded. "I don't know either." We sat in silence, but this time it felt shared. I realized then that this story was bigger than our marriage, bigger than my pain. It was about responsibility, about courage, about what we owe the people we bring into the world. And that understanding brought us closer to something unavoidable, a moment when silence would no longer be enough. The truth was moving, slowly, but it was moving toward the light. The turning point did not come with raised voices or broken things. It did not arrive in the middle of an argument. It came quietly, on a morning that looked like every other morning we had shared for years. Sunlight filtered through the kitchen window, landing softly on the table. The same table where our children had once spilled cereal and laughed without worry. The same table where I had read the letters that changed everything. Daniel sat there with his coffee growing cold. He had not taken a sip in a long time. His eyes were fixed on nothing in particular. I watched him from the doorway. There was something about the way his shoulders sagged that morning, like he had reached the end of running. "I don't want us to live like this anymore," I said. My voice was calm, not accusing, just honest. He looked up slowly, as if the words took time to reach him. The silence between us felt thick, but not sharp. "I can't carry this alone," I continued, "and neither can you." Daniel nodded, barely moving his head. His eyes filled, but the tears stayed where they were. "I don't know what to do," he said. I took a deep breath. "I think you do," I replied. "I think you've always known." He waited. So did I. "I think you need to write to her," I said. The words settled into the room gently, like dust falling after something has been moved. Daniel stared at me, his face pale. "I don't deserve that," he said quietly. "This isn't about what you deserve," I answered. "It's about what's right." He shook his head. "I'm afraid." "I know," I said. "So am I." That afternoon, Daniel sat at the kitchen table with a blank sheet of paper. No lines, no guidance, just white space. He held the pen loosely, like it might fall from his hand. I stayed nearby, but did not hover. This was something he had to do on his own. He started writing, stopped, crossed things out. Sometimes he stared at the paper for long minutes, his jaw tight. Other times his pen moved quickly, like something inside him had finally found a way out. At one point, he looked up at me. "What if she hates me?" he asked. "She has the right to feel whatever she feels," I said softly. "You do too." He nodded and returned to the page. Hours passed that way. The afternoon light shifted across the floor. The house stayed quiet. When he finally finished, his shoulders dropped. He looked exhausted, but there was something else there too. Relief. He folded the letter carefully and placed it in an envelope. He did not seal it right away. He just held it. "I won't show it to you," he said, "and I won't ask to see it," I replied. That letter was not about us. It was about a door he had never opened. The days after he mailed the letter were some of the longest I can remember, not because anything dramatic happened, but because we were waiting. Waiting changes time. It stretches minutes into hours. It makes silence louder. Daniel checked the mail every day. Then he stopped. "I don't want to hope," he said one morning. "I don't want to be disappointed." I understood that. Hope can hurt. Still, something inside him had shifted. He spoke more openly now, not just about the past, but how it had shaped him. He told me how guilt had followed him through every big moment of our life, our wedding day, the birth of our children. He had smiled through it all, afraid that if he stopped, the truth would spill out. Listening to him was painful, but it was also grounding. For the first time, there was no guessing, no wondering what lived behind his silence. Then, one afternoon, the mail arrived. I heard Daniel's footsteps slow near the door. He stood there longer than usual. When he turned around, his face had changed. "There's a letter," he said. The envelope was simple, the handwriting unfamiliar. His hands shook as he held it. "Do you want me to open it?" he asked. I thought about that, about what it would mean either way. Yes, I said finally, but not alone. We sat together at the table. Our knees touched. That felt important. Daniel opened the envelope slowly. He read silently first. Then his face crumpled. Tears came fast, not quiet ones, deep ones that shook his chest. "She knows," he said. "She always wondered." The letter was careful, measured. His daughter wrote that her mother had told her part of the truth years ago, that there had always been questions, a space no one filled. She was not angry, not exactly. She was cautious, curious. She wrote that she needed time, that she did not know what she wanted yet, but she was willing to talk. That was all. And it was more than either of us had expected. That letter changed the air in the house, not because it fixed anything, but because it confirmed something important. The truth was worth telling. Daniel looked at me, fear and hope mixed together. "I don't know what happens now," he said. "I don't either, but we'll face it honestly." He reached for my hand. I let him. That moment did not erase the pain, but it gave it direction. The weeks that followed were full of careful steps. Daniel and his daughter exchanged a few letters, short ones. No demands, no expectations. He shared the feelings with me, even when he did not share the words. That trust mattered. I watched him struggle with regret in a new way, not hiding from it, facing it. And I saw something else too. Growth. For the first time in a long while, Daniel was not running from his past, and I was not pretending it didn't exist. We were standing in the open together. Some days were still heavy, some nights were still quiet in the wrong way, but the truth had entered the room, and once truth enters a space, it changes how everything breathes. I realized then that love is not proven by avoiding pain. It's proven by choosing honesty, even when it shakes the ground beneath you. That choice had brought us here, to uncertainty, to vulnerability, but also to something real. And for the first time since I found the envelope, I felt like we were no longer standing still. After the letter came, life did not suddenly feel lighter. It felt different, like the air had shifted, but the weight was still there. We woke each morning not knowing what the day would bring. Would there be another letter, a phone call? Nothing at all. Uncertainty became part of our routine. We learned to live alongside it, the way people learn to live with pain that does not leave but changes shape. Daniel checked the mail again, but without the same urgency. It was no longer desperation, it was readiness. "I'm not expecting forgiveness," he told me one evening. "I just want her to know I exist." That honesty mattered. It told me he was not chasing comfort, he was accepting responsibility. A few weeks later, another letter arrived. This one was longer. Daniel read it slowly, his brow furrowed, his breathing careful. When he finished, he handed it to me. "You can read it," he said. I hesitated. Then I took it. His daughter wrote about her life, her work, her family. She wrote about growing up with questions that never had answers, about how she used to look at strangers and wonder if one of them might be her father. That sentence stayed with me. It followed me long after I folded the letter. She asked careful questions, nothing demanding, nothing angry, just curiosity wrapped in caution. I handed the letter back, my chest tight. "I think she's brave," I said. Daniel nodded. "Yes, she is." They began writing regularly after that, once every couple of weeks. Each letter opened a little more. Each response carried both hope and restraint. Daniel changed through that process, not in loud ways, in quiet ones. He smiled more softly. He listened more deeply. Sometimes he sat alone in the living room after finishing a letter, staring at the wall. I let him have that space. Other times he talked about regret, about wishing he had been braver sooner. "I can't go back," he said once, but I can stop hiding." I reached for his hand. "That matters," I said. For me, the healing came slower. Some days I felt strong and grounded. Other days, the old hurt flared up without warning. I would see a father and daughter laughing together in the park, and something inside me would ache. Not from jealousy, but from loss. Loss of the marriage I thought I had. Loss of the simplicity I once trusted. I talked about it when I could. Daniel listened without defending himself. That was new, and it mattered. Eventually, the letters turned into phone calls, short ones at first. Daniel paced the room when he spoke to her, like he did when he was nervous. I could hear his voice through the door, gentle, careful. After one call, he came to me with tears in his eyes. He called me Dad, he said. I felt something tighten in my chest, then loosen. "That's a lot," I said. He nodded. I didn't expect it. I realized then that healing does not follow straight lines. It loops and turns and surprises you. The question of meeting came up slowly, not as a demand, as a possibility. "I don't want to rush her," Daniel said, "and I don't want to pressure you." I appreciated that, more than he knew. We talked about it honestly, about fear, about boundaries. "I don't want to disappear from my own life," I told him, "but I don't want to stand in the way of something important either." He squeezed my hand. "I see you," he said. That simple sentence held so much. When the day finally came, it was ordinary. No big build-up, just a lunch at a quiet cafe. Daniel asked if I wanted to come. I surprised myself by saying yes. "I want to be part of the truth," I said, "not outside of it." The cafe was small and warm. Sunlight streamed through the windows. She arrived first. She looked up when we walked in. I recognized Daniel in her face immediately. Not exact, but familiar. The meeting was gentle, awkward at times, human. We talked about small things, work, food. No one pushed too far. No one pretended it was easy. At one point, she looked at me and said, "Thank you for coming." I nodded. "You're welcome." That was enough. After that day, things did not suddenly feel complete, but they felt real. Daniel and his daughter continued building something new, carefully, with respect. I found my place in it too, not as an outsider, not as a replacement, just as myself. Daniel and I talked more openly than we ever had, about everything. Our marriage was no longer what it once was. It was something else, stronger in some ways, more fragile in others, but honest. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sky darken, Daniel said, "I don't expect you to forgive me completely." I thought about that. I don't think forgiveness is a finish line. I think it's something you practice. He smiled sadly. I can live with that. So could I. Because forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing to stay present. And presence, I learned, is the bravest thing love can ask of us. As the months passed, the sharp edges of the pain softened, not disappeared, softened. Life grew around the truth instead of avoiding it. We learned that resolution doesn't always look like closure. Sometimes it looks like acceptance, like choosing to keep showing up, with open eyes, with open hands. That was our resolution. Not perfect, but real. Time moves differently once the truth is spoken. It does not rush anymore. It walks beside you. Months passed after that first meeting at the cafe. Not dramatic months, ordinary ones. But ordinary felt new to me now, because nothing was hidden beneath it. Daniel and his daughter kept building their relationship slowly. They talked on the phone sometimes. They wrote when words felt easier on paper. There were pauses, moments of distance, but there was also care. I learned to give that process space, not because it did not affect me, but because love does not grow when it is crowded. Our home changed in small ways. We laughed again, but quieter, more aware. We sat together in silence without it feeling heavy. That was new.
Daniel no longer avoided certain memories. He spoke about his past without lowering his voice. There were no locked drawers anymore, no letters hidden away. Truth lived in the open now, and it needed room. One afternoon, Daniel asked me a question I had been waiting for. "Are you still angry?" he said. I thought about it honestly. "I don't think anger is what I feel anymore," I replied. "What is it then?" he asked. "Understanding," I said, "and sadness." He nodded slowly. "I can live with that." So could I. Because anger demands action. Understanding asks for patience. I met his daughter again later that year. This time it felt easier. We talked like people who shared something real, even if it was complicated. There was respect there. At one point, she said, "I'm glad he told you the truth." I felt that land gently in my chest. "So am I replied. That moment closed a quiet loop inside me. Daniel and I grew older together in a more honest way than before, not because our life became perfect, but because it became real. We learned that love is not proven by never hurting each other. It is proven by what we do after the hurt is revealed. I no longer wondered who my husband really was. I knew him, and knowing him fully, with all his flaws, felt better than loving a version built on silence. Sometimes, late at night, I think about the envelope, how something so small held so much weight. If I had not opened that drawer, if I had not read those letters, our life might have stayed comfortable, but it would have stayed incomplete. Truth does that. It unsettles, but it also completes. If there is one thing this experience taught me, it is this: secrets do not protect love. They delay honesty. And honesty, even when it arrives late, still has power. It gives people the chance to choose, to stay, to grow. I chose to stay, not because it was easy, but because it was real. And in that choice, I found peace. Life does not promise us clean endings. It gives us chances. Chances to face what we fear, chances to speak what we hide, chances to love with open eyes. That envelope changed everything, not because of what it revealed, but because it forced us to stop hiding from the truth. And in that truth, quiet and imperfect, we found a way forward.